This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Today I've got Aradia and Alex here with me. Alex London, you may remember, was on Lord of Chaos Chapter 18, A Taste of Solitude. So welcome back, Alex.
Hi, thank you for having me back again.
Oh, my pleasure. And Aradia, you may remember, I don't know, have you ever been on this podcast before, Aradia? I'm not sure if there's an episode I can point to.
Once, maybe?
Just a kick. Just for a few minutes.
Yeah. So you were off for a while because of moving, but now you're back.
Yeah.
And we are dipping today into kind of an intense chapter. It's Egwene, Matt, Rand, Avienda, Oliver, it's Tom. It's got the big 10 in it.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of highlighter that went down in the marking up of this chapter.
At one point, I had to start varying colors just so I could remember to, read the sentence and then switch to a new idea for the next sentence, because there was so many sentences just on top of each other I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
See, this time I didn't take as many notes because I just read through the chapter instead. And I didn't want to highlight things because I don't want to mess up the book.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I love digital books.
True. Digital books you can just highlight and then unhighlight. That is a good advantage.
Although I made a terrible mistake of trying to sync my books with the wrong phone today, and it deleted my entire library. So,
yikes. Oof.
Thank God for backups. But I did have a short half-hour scramble before the beginning of this recording to try and figure out where are my books and how can I get them back. Or digital and physical and audio. I mean, for the Wheel of Time, you might as well have 3 or 4 of each, right?
Buy a print book, then just handwrite it down onto different pieces of paper so that you have a special custom handwritten one.
Exactly. Today, we are talking about Chapter 33, Courage to Strengthen, and our symbol is the spear and shield of the Aiel.
For Aiel courage. Egwene's Aiel heart.
Yes, her Aiel heart, which is how we both begin and end this chapter, but also the snakes and foxes, courage to strengthen.
Yeah, which I think is more the direct quote for the title, but also easily applies to Egwene's personal journey.
Well, when you pair it with the chapter symbol, I mean, it has to be taken that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, this chapter is peak Jordan. The layers of storyline that he's put on top of each other and the multiple meanings he's given each sentence in this chapter is so good. Like I said, I'm very excited about this chapter.
I'm nodding.
Yeah. So we begin with Egwene.
I've done a lot of reading recently out loud, and it's pretty hard. I mean, I learned you need to have water nearby.
Would you like to read us in?
I can try.
Give it a shot.
Kneeling in just her shift, Egwene frowned at the dark green silk riding dress she had worn into the waist, what seemed a very long time ago. There was so much to do. She had given some time to writing a hasty note and rousing Cowind from her blankets with instructions to leave it at the Long Man in the morning. It said little beyond the fact that she had to go away. She did not know much more, but she could not just disappear without telling Gawain. A few of the phrases made her blush to remember. Saying she loved him was one thing, but actually asking him to wait? Yet she had taken care of him as far as was possible. Now she had to ready herself, and she hardly knew for what. The tent flap was thrown back, and Amy's entered. Then Bear and Soralea. They stood in a line, looking down at her, 3 faces stern with disapproval. It was very hard not to clutch the dress to her breast. In her shift, she felt very much at a disadvantage. In armor, she would have been at a disadvantage. A matter of knowing she was in the wrong. She was surprised that it had taken them so long to come.
That was a good shot.
I was going to say, you've got a great narrator voice, Alex.
I've been doing it a real lot recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's good to hear it eventually.
Hey. Eventually, it's taking a bit, but we're close.
Well, it's a bit like herding cats. You've got to organize all the people and get them to work with you and on their own schedule and stuff like that.
Yeah, very close now. I almost have the whole first episode set done.
So I just want to point out that she's wearing a green dress.
Oh,
green
yeah.
Green dress.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that. It's not always significant, okay?
It is when it's a green dress on Egwene.
Fair enough. And that is what she arrived in, right?
I was just saying that he put so much emphasis on clothing that it is significant most of the time.
So she has basically left a letter saying, I'm leaving to Gawain. Which again, I guess maybe tell him face to face, but I guess it was so abrupt, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, she's taking this very literally. Come to us right now.
right. But yeah, I mean, asking him to wait is basically like being like, hey, let's go steady.
Yeah,
Even though
like right now.
Yeah.
It's very different than the letters that Elaine gave Rand when they left.
Yeah.
One would hope so.
Yeah.
I guess one of the
Yeah,
letters could have been similar.
Elaine just went for like, I love you, I hate you.
Yeah.
Like, there really wasn't
Yeah.
a lot of, like, here's what to do with that information. Whereas Egwene is saying, I love you, and here's some instructions for what to do with that information.
I wonder if Gawain is going to completely disregard those instructions. Oh, right.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is definitely around peak time of hating Galwin for me.
Oh, this is peak Gawain hate? Because mine, this is like the beginning of Gawain hate for me.
No, I think this, I mean, okay, and later towards, there's some parts later that are still pretty peak Galwin hate, but around this point I was just mostly confused because their relationship just kind of happened and then just kind of ended. And I was like, oh, that was odd.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a drive-by relationship. Like, what?
At the beginning, or
Okay.
towards the beginning of the book, when they first started like fawning over each other, I was like, when was this a thing? I mean, I knew Galwin had a crush on her, but it was just very sudden.
It was. And they spent a fair amount of time together in the tower. He was training to be a warder. She was training to be Aes Sedai. They were seeing each other because, you know, he's her best friend's brother. And they were, like, hanging out a fair amount. So, you know,
Yeah.
it was off screen, but it's not that sudden. There was a time for them to develop a relationship and a crush.
Yeah, it was a behind the scenes romance.
Right. And that combined with these daily walks has meant they've actually spent a fair amount of time in each other's presence. It's just almost entirely off screen.
Yeah, they've spent more time together than Rand and Elaine did. I mean,
And I don't think they did a lot of talking. I think they spent a lot of time making out. And it's just kind of like the whole, like, so we've been making out for a couple of weeks and I have to go away, so we're now exclusive. Like, what? Okay. Be that way. But, like, I don't know. But also, this is for me kind of peak why I understand why Gawain makes the shitty choices he does. Is because this is the second time that a woman he cares about, or multiple people he cares about, just sort of vanish out from under him with
Right.
an incredibly unsatisfying answer that uncertainty persists for months. And like we all have a very strong idea right now about how much uncertainty wears at you, right? So I can kind of like, this is a major point in I understand why Gawain is not in a good headspace to make rational choices for the rest of the series. Even though she does say, like, I'm going away.
yeah, he's almost always left out.
Yeah, exactly. He's left out and he's meant to be right there at the eye of the storm. And everyone's just like, I'll get back to you later. And eventually he's like, fuck it. I'm making later happen now. And he just totally goes in the wrong direction because no one ever tells him anything. Doesn't mean he makes good choices. It's just this is peak. I have sympathy for him.
So I've done a lot of talking about Gawain lately, and I would like to not, if
That's
possible.
fair.
Can we? So I am going to jump right into Egwene and Amis interacting, where Egwene is like, "Go ahead and punish me for the lie," and Amis is like, "We can't punish you. You're no longer our pupil. The moment you're Aes Sedai, your sisters ask you to be one of them." Aradia, what was the lie she got caught in?
That she had worked out how to do this thing, even though she told them she would stop thinking about
Gotcha.
it. It's a very nitpicky sort of lie. I don't really think that they would consider it a lie, you know? It's an interesting thing I noticed through this whole chapter is how Egwene transitions from looking for loopholes and looking for excuses and that sort of like splitting of hairs Aes Sedai bullshit. And then she transitions into just take what you want and pay for it without looking for a loophole or a way to get out of it or whatever. And this chapter, I feel like, really articulates that transition. And that is what we're seeing here is her being like, oh, well, they're mad at me for finding a loophole. And they're like, it's not a loophole. It's just how it is. But why are you being so weird about it? But it's because she's been lying about the bigger lie, right? So she has that thing weighing on her consciousness and making her like project that onto this other stuff that's really not a big deal.
Major guilt complex.
Yeah, and then she, literally gets it beaten out of her, and then she's fine.
Yeah.
It's very weird. I
very
don't
weird.
agree. I don't think I'd be a good Aiel if this is the only way to deal with personal problems.
And it's not necessarily the only way, but it is the quickest way.
It's a very simple solution, but also kind of
Yeah.
a really brutally weird solution at the same time.
Yeah, it's like, is this really the most effective way to...
I do have to wonder, though, if, like, some of my friends had apologized to me, or I apologized to some of my friends, and instead of being like, yeah, okay, I got to, like, smack the shit out of them for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's easy
I
way to
might
get
be,
out
like,
your
more willing to
frustration.
accept, yeah, I might be like, okay, yeah, now we're even. Like,
I feel like
just
that
because,
builds
like-
really bad relationships. I mean,
it does. A terrible, terrible relationship.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to be friends with someone who beat me.
No, but at the same time, it puts weight on an apology that sometimes apologies don't necessarily have.
Yeah, I get the idea of doing something that is uncomfortable. I feel like this is kinkier than it needs to be. Robert, why are you like this, Robert?
I blame Harriet. I swear to God, because he bases all the women he knows on Harriet, which makes me think that Harriet has a hell of a spanking.
how do you know she was the one who
Spanking.
liked the spanking? Could have been either of them.
Yeah, it's just... And the whole, like,
It's a bit
humiliation
weird. I mean...
thing,
Right.
like, I don't get humiliation as a character building device. I really just don't get it.
I get the
Well, and
humiliation. I just wish there was a different way to go about it that he had chosen than flat out just spanking these people.
This is more of a strapping, I suppose, so there's that for variety.
True.
That, yeah. This is definitely, it's more of a whipping than
Which is a lot
a
more
spanking.
painful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She's talking
it's a leather belt.
6
Yeah.
beatings per person, and there's like half a dozen people, if not more, maybe 10 people here.
And Chesa, when she sees her a few days later, thinks that she got thrown off of a horse, like, with vicious ferocity. Like, that's how bruised her back is.
And there's a couple of them, right? Like, 2 of them really go at it, right? And like, I looked them up. The names Saranda and Aaron both just really beat the crap out of her. And as far as I can tell, for no real reason other than like they were just particularly offended. Like, there's no history that explains it. That I
think
can
it's
find.
because they were some of her best friends.
Okay.
Because they were the fellow apprentices, I think. I think that's why.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So they're the ones that she was closest with, right? So they're the ones who are most personally betrayed.
I was trying to find something that they had in common, and that makes sense.
I think it's that they're all the apprentices together.
That would make sense as to why they'd be as angry as they seem to be.
Yeah, more like they're equals rather than her.
Exactly. They're not
Superiors.
helping her meet Toe. They're fucking pissed. Which also meets Toe, and then they're fine with her after that. But, like, there's a little bit more of, I think, that emotional component. Like, how could you lie to me? I thought we were friends. And less of, like, how dare you lie? Lying is shameful.
The one thing I really do like about this scene is it shows how much Egwene's mental reasoning has shifted to the Aiel Jiito way of thinking. But you told me how wrong you think what I'm doing is to do. You said I must not even think about it. I said I wouldn't, and then I went ahead and worked out how to do it. But that's where she's talking about working out, going into Teleron Riyadh.
In the flesh, using
In the flesh.
traveling and Teleron Riyadh. Working out gateways, reverse engineering gateways without realizing it at the time.
Basically.
Because she uses that in front of Moghedian and it turns into a gateway.
And my favorite part is Cerilia's response. You see, I told you she would understand. She could be Aiel, right? That, like, that reasoning is what makes her Aiel. That's the mental, not the punishment, not the beating, but the idea that by violating my word and doing something I said I wouldn't do, I have done wrong.
Yeah, it's not the impact of the lie, it's the fact that I lied that is the problem. Yeah, and when Cerilia gives you a big ol' full face smile and says that you could be Aiel, like, you have arrived in your training.
Sadly, that's before she reveals their worst lies to them, but the point still stands. It's still really nice for her for a moment.
It's a beautiful moment before it all comes crashing down.
And then, yeah, she gives them the other 2 big lies, which is she was entered Teleron Riyadh after she promised she would not, which is like, Amis says she would never teach her again if she did that, and she keeps to that word. She never teaches her again. And then, of course, the idea that she's not Aes Sedai, and she lied about that. Which I think for them is less of a big deal.
Possibly, yeah. Because it's not a direct violation of their pact between teacher and student as much as just a lie about her origins that are her personal backstory, but...
Well, no, I think it is a big deal because they are still adjusting to what it means to have Aes Sedai not be demigods.
Yeah.
So for her to be like, oh yeah, I pretended to be a god while you were in the process of deconstructing the fact that these people aren't gods. Like, and I mean, if you watch Sorelia's reaction as she reveals this, she doesn't really care so much about the dreamwalking because she's not a dreamwalker, right? So to her, it's not a big deal. But when Egwene says, I'm basically an apprentice from a different society of magic people, Sorelia's like, now wait a second, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
A lot of the understanding that Aes Sedai are just people came from Egwene.
She did help humanize Aes Sedai.
Humanize them a lot.
There's that conversation later where some of the wise ones say, Aes Sedai have no honor. And Sorelia's like, there's one. There is one, and maybe a couple of others, but Egwene Alvear definitely has honor. And in large part because of the events of this night, and what came before, obviously.
She definitely helped humanize the Aes Sedai for them, but the trouble comes with the fact that she did fundamentally lie about who she is and who her culture, like how her culture is set up. And so that is a tough thing for them to hear, which makes sense why they would be so angry about it.
It was an active lie. She lied about that repeatedly to their faces over and over again out loud.
Yeah.
And she misrepresented Aes Sedai, who are defined by their inability to lie. So there's some twisty weirdness on the edges of that, too.
Yeah, I can see how Sorelia's head came up, and just, like, the implications of the fact that, like, oh, that makes a lot of difference in, like, lying and a bunch of other stuff.
And, I think you're right that it's the active participation in the lie more than the content of the lie that really pisses them off.
Yeah, that she lied to them every single day that she knew them.
And in a lot of cases, she didn't just let them assume she was Aes Sedai, she actively told them she was Aes Sedai.
Mm-hmm. I've only been Aes Sedai for a few years.
Right, like we saw literally in the last chapter, they are quizzing her about the Aes Sedai with Rand. And she's like, remember, I've only been Aes Sedai for a few years, so I don't know them all that well, and they're nodding along.
Yeah, it's a very specific lie that you're leaning into there. That's not, you may call me Alice.
It took me a second. I was like, who's Alice? I was like, oh, right, of course. That's for some reason my head went to Resident Evil. Don't know why it went there. The reason she asks for a beating is because that's what Aviendha got when she lied as an apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
Way, way, way back in the day.
Yeah, in the waste. She goes to the wise ones saying that she lied twice today and she won't say to who. And so the wise ones beat her because they don't know what else to do because they don't know what her toe is. And then Egwene sees it in the sweat tent and is like, why does Aviendha look like she was beaten? All quietly. And the wise ones, I forget which one, but she says very loudly, like, oh, are you asking why we beat the shit out of her? It's because she came to me and said she lied. Done.
That's right. That's right.
Was that the lie about Rand?
Yeah, it was about Rand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that no one would consider a lie except Aviendha.
Yeah, only a maiden. But yes, I do know what that lie was.
Guess she was lying to herself, not to them.
Yeah, and lying to Rand, too. I think she to tells Rand that she hates him, but,
That's what it is. Yeah, she tells Rand she hates him. That's the lie.
But she hates him because she loves him.
Exactly.
She's not finishing the implication of that.
Right. I hate that I love you.
Right, exactly. So it's...
Oh, it's too much. Like, there was a song that said that, like, a few years ago.
And so then she's like, oh, I have so many feelings. I just need an old woman to beat me up. That's a very weird reaction. But maidens.
Guess it's common in their society.
Yeah, and they're proud. It's a thing that proud people do in their society, and maidens are the proudest of them all. Which is why Egwene is very proud when she holds her head up high and says, please beat the shit out of me so I can stop feeling guilty. I mean, I ask the favor of helping me meet my toe.
And I also like that she stops being nervous. She's told them the truth. She's asked them to help them meet it. She's not nervous about the punishment. It was more, you're nervous up until the point you step onto stage or you start the race or whatever. Like, it was all the anticipation, but now that it started, that's all gone.
Once you can't put it off anymore. That relief.
And I think that lack of uncertainty is something that really removes, a lot of anxiety is anxiety about what's going to happen in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's once she knows she's going to get the shit beat out of her. She's not nervous about it anymore.
Yeah, and losing the Aiel Dreamwalker's teachings is less of a thing to worry about because now her time with them as a student is over anyway. I like how she's rushing to get to Saladar, and then she decides that her pride demands that Saladar's going to have to wait for several hours.
Right. And she still gets there in record time.
I appreciate that she takes a moment to actually consider just running away and abandoning him, or not fulfilling her toe, and then steps back and decides that she has to, or else she would betray what she's learned there.
And I agree with that. I think the only way that she could have been successful in being the Amyrlin is if she was true to herself and true to this.
Oh yeah, this is what prepares her to deal with her imprisonment under Elida. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If she had run away from this lesson, she would have broken and run away from the tower.
Yeah, her Aiel training was a lot more instrumental in how she became the Amyrlin that she is than her actual Aes Sedai training at the tower. To me, at least.
Yeah.
I'm nodding.
I'm nodding.
Because they're just horribly corrupt and pretty much terrible at most of the things they do, but that's okay. They try.
There's
sometimes.
less dark friends running the Aiel than the White Tower, in fairness.
How many dark friends in the Aiel do we ever see that aren't the Shido Aiel?
Yeah, there's Melindra is the only named Aiel dark friend I think we see.
Really?
Matt's girlfriend.
I think. And then there's the implication that clearly there must be, and surely the Shido have more of them than anyone else because they're sneaking Shido. And then, of course, there's the Red Veils.
The band that attacked Matt, he cut down. Pretty sure they're all dark friend, Aiel.
I mean, the Red Veils are, like, mostly turned, so, you know. Are they
Yeah,
dark friends
it's
or
kinda
are they
cheating.
just Shadow Spawn? So,
Yeah, when you've been forced into it, it's a little rough.
Here's a question for you. Could an Aes Sedai use the power against a Red Veil, a turned Red Veil, if he wasn't threatening her life?
Oh, because whether or not they're so touched by the shadow that they would count as shadow spawn?
Right.
that's an interesting question, because if he was, you know, neutralized in some fashion,
Right.
right? If he's able to channel and he's within eye range of her, he is by definition threatening her, right? But if he was, say, shielded and bound, is he shadow spawn or is he just in a really crappy halfway state? That's an interesting question.
Or if, for example, he was like trying to negotiate a truce or something and wasn't threatening.
I don't think any of the Red Veils are left with enough personality and autonomy to ever do that. I think that they are by definition weapons, and like that's what happens to them. But if they were literally incapable of being dangerous, maybe they would negotiate. I mean, we only ever see them at like the peak mission of their entire lives, so it's not really a great.
Yeah, they don't turn up a ton in the books themselves.
Yeah, and the whole thing with the last battle is during the entire last battle, the Aes Sedai their lives are being threatened, so you can pretty much justify anything. Be like, yeah.
Right. Any enemy combatant is threatening you, and those guys are by definition they're dreadlords, right? A dreadlord is kind of like shadow spawn in the sense that they are categorically an enemy.
And doesn't the oath also include Dark Friend?
No, it doesn't. I don't think it does. I'm pretty sure there's a discussion at one point where an Aes Sedai is like, I can't go around just randomly killing people who I'm pretty sure are dark friends. I don't have good enough spidey senses with the power stuff to like tell. Like you have to be like Padan Fane levels of involved in the shadow in order to like be definitively I don't think dark friends are included in the oaths. I don't think. But now I'm not sure. I'm talking about it and I'm like, crap.
Never use the one power as a weapon except against dark friends or shadow spawn.
Oh.
Or in the last extreme defense of her life, the life of her warder or another Aes Sedai. So dark friends are included.
All right, there's a trivia question for you, Morgan.
So as long as they know that it's a dark friend.
Right.
What if they just
And I would
happen to
assume-
get lucky?
They just try it on every. You know, that would actually be a great test. You just try and balefire everybody, and it only works on the ones who are actually dark
that
friends.
doesn't work. You can still tell a lie if you believe a falsehood. You could kill an innocent if you thought they were a dark friend.
But then if you balefire them, you'll never know if you were wrong, so really no harm came. I mean...
I don't think that's how that works.
They'll be reborn. They'll forgive you sometime.
But I don't think there's any question in my head that a turned Red Veil would be considered a dark friend.
Yeah, that's an auto blast right there.
Yeah. Auto Blaster. On. Autobots, roll out.
Good old Transformers. It's been a while since I've seen Transformers.
Super Skylake is saying we have a White Cloak Aes Sedai because innocence because they might be dark friends. Oh my god, that'd be the worst. See, this is what the White Cloaks are afraid of with all of their preaching against people who touch the one source.
Oh, you mean they're projecting?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No way.
Because people in power tend to project very negative things on those they oppress out of fear of retribution.
The White Cloaks are so good. They do everything right.
And so now we get a perspective switch while Egwene is getting beaten. So we can imagine, like, this whole perspective switch, she's just getting spanked the whole time. Because then we switch back to her after she's getting after the spanking is done.
We'll cut back to her later.
Yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back once she's got her clothes back on.
Well, I don't think she does at the end.
Actually, no. We'll come back once she has her clothes off, unfortunately.
She doesn't get them back on until, like, the last sentence.
Yeah.
Yay. Changes that will have to be made.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not a point for tasteful nudity. That's just untasteful nudity.
I'd argue there's very few points that there can be tasteful nudity in the show, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I wonder often how they're going to handle that.
Yeah. It'll be fun to see.
Lots of ankles.
Yeah.
Lots of very seductive ankles.
Honestly, how they handle nudity is going to tell me a lot about the kind of show they're trying to make.
Which audience they're appealing to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's nudity in the books that doesn't need to be there, which means you can either pump it up and show a lot of nudity and be like, well, it's in the books, or you can pretty much cut it out and be tasteful. But there's also times when, like, it is occasionally necessary for the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, completely cutting out nudity is not also... I'm not pro no nudity at all, but...
Very scene specific.
It's very scene specific,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
I kind of get it for the Aes Sedai testing because it's like a rebirth ceremony. So, I mean, you could cut it out because it doesn't necessarily need it, but I get it in the context.
How much you show when the characters are actually nude.
Yeah, definitely. How much you linger on it and just, like, make that the focus versus the actual...
Right. And how much of it's just, like, you can do the headshot, bare shoulders, and a dress dropping to the... Right? Like...
Yeah.
Right.
Or
you can make sure that there's walking down a hallway and the only light beam is on their ass.
And, like, the actors are certainly attractive enough to support either.
Quite. Quite. I hope that they don't take all the nudity out because that is a real fine cast we got there.
Because have ya seen the cast?
Yeah. Just saying, like, the Shinaran baths are a great conversation set piece. Just saying.
Oh, yikes. that would be kind of weird, just everybody just sitting there naked.
I mean, I grew up around hippies, so I've literally lived that experience. So it seems pretty natural to me. Pretty normal, I'm saying. Actually, not natural. It seems normal to me, but...
Kind of thing, though, that'll end up detracting from, like, what's actually being said in the scene. Because everybody will just be too focused looking at all the hot people.
That's what rewatches are for.
I remember, like, when I first found Game of Thrones, I also found a gif of, like, 3 of the dudes, like, you know, shirtless, oily, firelight, and it just flashing the words, like, I watch for the plot. It's like,
Game of Thrones is for sure an example of what I don't want it to be nudity-wise. So we'll see.
Please, not that. Please, not that.
Not that there aren't times when Game of Thrones did well. There are some scenes of nudity that did well, but most of them did not.
Yeah.
And Game of Thrones was violence and sex as shock factor.
Yeah.
In Wheel of Time, yeah, I mean, I guess there is some violence shock.
The violence
there,
somewhat.
Yeah, but the violence isn't necessarily there to shock you. It's there to provide character development and overcoming things.
Yeah, like what Tabernus is saying in the Discord, you can manage it through how the characters react to nudity. So the Aes Sedai should look uncomfortable when they're, you know, stripped to the waist for their ceremonies.
Exactly.
And you should want them to be getting dressed again because that's what they want, right?
Yeah, you should feel the awkwardness that they have in those situations.
Yeah, and then like one steamy scene where you see why Nynaeve and Lan are having this whole tertiary plot. One steamy look, and like there you go. Now you've got that whole plot just like on a boil, like on the back burner.
I think you can do like maybe some tasteful Avienda slipping into her blankets.
Mm-hmm.
Nude scenes as Rand like kind of slips into the tent. Rand. You can get just like a glimpse.
So then he's blushing like for real and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and you're blushing with him because it's like...
And she's uncomfortable and he's uncomfortable, and they're just like kind of trying to be not uncomfortable together in the tent.
I feel like the difference is how many times they go back to the same thing, though. Like, if you every episode see Avienda getting into the blankets naked, then that would be gratuitous versus having to see it like one time, whereas...
Or like when Rand walks in on her, right? Like she's not standing there sexily, she's standing there trying to figure out how a sponge bath works, right? Like that's a whole different kind of naked.
There really shouldn't be any nudity in season 1.
No, that is the Tolkien hat tip. You can't have nudity in that.
Yeah, like there's nothing in books 1 or 2. It's really not until...
There's a little bit in book 2 with the clinging clothes and the whole like this isn't fit for public. That's in book 2.
Yeah, but that's still clothes.
There's no nudity scene, though. So there's no,
the
like...
Shineran baths.
Is that in book 2?
Yeah.
I feel like the baths, though, I mean...
Yeah, but that's just like...
It's very
Roman
off-screen.
baths and stuff. Yeah,
it's a lot of world building.
It's a very easy thing to cut. I feel like that's one of the choices where if they choose to include that as nudity, then I'll kind of figure they're going to go all in, because when you're choosing to include such an unnecessary one, it's a little odd.
No, but it sets up the Puritanism of the Two Rivers boys so well.
It does, yeah.
That's true.
Because you get to see how the three of them react to the same thing, and then the two women. And anyhow, we're super far afield.
We are super far afield.
We're supposed to be
talking about...
But I do think, like, normalizing men and women taking a bath together, that is common in a lot of cultures. Like, in our world. Like, that is not necessarily totally uncommon.
And I guess it's one of the rare chances you could see the dudes actually naked, too, because... they're less commonly nude in the books.
It's equal opportunity nudity.
Yes. Yes, we require all the butts. All of them.
So
we're on Matt now, right?
Yes. Snakes and foxes.
Leaning on his elbow, Matt examined the game of snakes and foxes laid out on the tent floor. Occasionally a drop of sweat fell from his chin, just missing the board. It was not a board at all, really, just a piece of red cloth with a web of lines drawn in black ink, and arrows showing which lines allowed movement only one way, and which both. 10 pale wooden discs, each with an inked triangle were the foxes, 10 with wavy line, the snakes. 2 lamps set at either side gave more than enough light. "We'll win this time, Matt," Oliver said excitedly. "I know we will." "Maybe," Matt said.
Maybe.
So I feel like there's a ton in that. This is the introduction of the Snakes and Foxes board.
There's a lot in that.
There's a lot in that,
a lot.
Yeah. What do you want to start with?
The piece of red cloth with the web of lines. Yeah. What is this board? It's like Snakes and Foxes meets a spider web meets an engineering diagram with quantum physics.
Oh, or it's just a game board.
Shush.
But it does. It kind of, it reminds me a little bit of Rand's banner, like the red banner with the black and white symbol.
Oh.
This is just the black symbol.
Fair.
Yeah.
Don't really have enough about their actual like world that the snakes and foxes live in to know if it's any kind of representative of their...
I figure it's a symbolic map of the tower.
Yeah. I do too. The ever-shifting corridors.
I think that it has some sort of encoding of like a quantum principle kind of thing, for like the way that Matt says the rules don't have to make sense according to their logic, they just have to be consistent. I think this whole thing about some of the lines movement goes both ways and some it only goes one way. This is some kind of map of their place. Not necessarily accurate, but like it's a symbolic representation of how twisty the geography of their place is.
Totally. And we see that when he goes into the world of the snakes, he can see he's basically walking through the curved parts of the web. And in the world of the foxes, he's walking through the straight parts of the web. Right? And so when he's in the foxes, each corridor has a little star shape in it, and that's where all the straight lines are going out. Whereas when he's with the snakes, he's constantly turning corners and things are changing because everything's curved. And so what you see, and then what they intersect at the towers, and the towers are sort of at these intersections of the two worlds. And there's 3 big towers. And he sees those through the windows at impossible angles as he goes through the curved hallways. And the towers are basically the Tower of Genji. So if you go through one gateway, you end up in the curved section of the board. If you go through another gateway, you go to the straight section of the board. And if you go through the tower, you end up in one of the 3 towers that supports the whole thing.
Just processing the words you said.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the 10 pale wooden discs are a triangle and a snake. Well, the triangle is the upside-down triangle, right? Which is the shape of a fox's face.
Right, and then the wavy line for the snakes.
For the snake. And then the snake and the fox, one on top of each other, is the symbol to open up the gateway into the Tower of Genji.
Yeah, which is where the insane foreshadowing that I never ever would have cared about the first time reading. It's really fun to see the second time. Or just, I really like the line of, "We will win this time, Matt," Olver said excitedly. Because he does eventually win the game, or the end of book 13.
13, because that's the cover. Yeah, end of 13, because he covers up. That's the cover of that book.
Well, the cover is them going into the tower.
Yeah.
Right, and then at the end they come out.
Olver
wins, and then Camelin
right before Camelin
goes up in smoke.
Yeah, because he's busy playing the game, and then Camelin.
Yeah, but the optimism of Olver and the cynicism of Matt, and it's like, well, Matt, when you win the game for real, Olver will also win the game and have all of his optimism justified. So good luck with that cynicism.
Yeah, there's a line here where he says, if they're going to play the game, it might as well be without his luck taking a hand. As long as it's a game, that's fine. But before he goes in the tower, remember it's...
and Matt Cawthon to bloody even the odds. I think
bloody
that's
even
the
odds.
It's very fun, because then the only way they get out is just by randomly using his luck to find each corridor.
Well, the only way they get out is by him remembering that he's been hauling around a damn key the whole time, and Noel didn't have to die if he'd ever thought about it for 2 freaking seconds.
That's true.
Noel didn't have to die. Of course, then he wouldn't have been there to rescue.
It was more
Olver,
fun that he did die, though. I mean...
Yeah, and the way he rescues Olver is required him being dead first.
Exactly.
That's true.
Otherwise, we would have just had to see Olver get absolutely decimated by a heck ton of Trollocs.
I was like so stressed for that whole sequence. I'm like, you cannot cut away from Olver yet again. This is not okay. I need to know that he's going to die or not die. You cannot keep me in suspense.
Sanderson is a master of building tension. Very good at that. By the way, have I mentioned we're recording on Rhythm of War release day? And I'd like to eventually...
You haven't, I don't think, actually.
Yeah, no.
Oh, right. We have to keep going with this because we're only 4 pages in and it's been an hour.
I'm just kidding. I knew this was going to be a long one. So yeah, I really like the fact that he's just sort of letting him play the game, but also the parallels between the game and then the idea is you can't win if you follow the rules. I think it's not that you can't win. I think it's just one of those things where it's like, it's 1 out of a
borderline
10
impossible.
million. Yeah, like it's one of those things where realistically no person, it's technically possible, but the odds are so unlikely that
right, the house built the game. The house is going to win.
Yeah, otherwise his comment about not including his own luck wouldn't make any sense, because if it's literally impossible to win, then his luck wouldn't matter.
Right, but it wouldn't be a fun game for the Eowyn and Eowyn if it was impossible to win, right? What's the fun in never potentially losing your prize, right?
Yeah, and I'm strictly talking about the board game. I think it's just one of those board games where it's like, if the dice come up exactly right over and over and over and over again, you
think it's actually a winnable game?
I assume so, or else it's his line of...
Yeah, but it's like one of those things where you have to roll 6s like 20 times in a row.
Yeah, I don't think that it's possible to win.
But Olver does win.
I know, because Matt is somehow tied to the dice. Well, okay, no, so I see what you're saying. He rolls the right dice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
The odds of rolling the right dice and getting to the center without getting caught is 1 in a billion.
Like more than the number of stars in the sky, kind of.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay.
They're like, statistically, there is no way to win unless you're Matt Cawthon.
Right.
Or his little weird adopted child.
Right.
Well, and again, I think those two events are linked, right? Like the
definitely.
events on the board and the events
moment to moment. Yeah, aside from the wibbly wobbly timey wimey, but yes, for sure. Which actually it makes it fit better, right? Because they're in a different dimension, which means that his game literally can mirror the events, like some sort of like active feedback to Rodek or something.
I like the Chutes and Ladders board in the chat.
Yeah, it's like we've got these fancy Egyptian games and this special fan game and Chutes and Ladders, which is always what I've thought of when I think of snakes and foxes. So it's Chutes and Ladders, it's what's in my head. I try to pretend it's not, but like I am that much of a child.
And the chutes are the snakes and the ladders are the foxes, clearly. Yeah.
Or the little kids are the foxes. Terrible little children.
Oh, well, you know little kids are foxy.
Oh, yikes.
Wait, no,
not the direction I was going in.
What? I'm leaving the podcast. Bye.
Hey, you said it, not me. I was just agreeing.
Yikes.
Sentences to never take out of context. Put it in front of the episode.
Oh, God. I don't want to go to jail. I really don't want to go to jail. he opens up the game, which we know is the way to actually open up the portal, and chanted the words, courage to strengthen, fire to bind, music to dazzle, iron to bind. Matt, why do we say that? There's no fire, no music, and no iron. I don't know. The line tickled something in the back of his head, but he could not bring it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we know that's from...
the 2 times he's gone through the doors. You brought no iron, no fire, no instruments of music. You followed the contract. He's been told this twice.
Right.
Yeah.
Short-term memory loss.
I mean, admittedly, he had other things going on, but you think, like, maybe make... this seems like a connection he could make.
A lot of his plot involves not remembering key things.
Yeah.
And it's, in fairness, he does this thing where he often writes off his own memories because he can't tell if they're from the other men or not.
Right.
So it's like, this could just be a cool piece of poetry that I heard one time 300 years ago. Or it could be something that's very important to not dying that's happened to you in the last, 20 years.
Yeah, he even immediately in the passage says that the old memories, he attributes it to the old memories instead of his own.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, Matt, I'm shaking the book out. I love that Matt is so frustrated and endeared by Olver, constantly asking questions that always start with why. I'm like, yeah, Olver, yeah. You be that awesome kid that just never stops asking why.
Why? Daedrid asked Riley. You are turning into a wonderful father. He shows a remarkable resemblance to you.
David with the sick burn.
And which sets up every single time when Matt's like, where is that kid learning how to say this thing? It's like, you, Matt. It's always you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's learning to leer at women. You can't leer at women that way. Really, Matt? Really? Because it seems to work for you.
It's always accompanied by patented Robert Jordan hypocrisy. You can't leer at women like that. Matt leered as he looked at a woman.
But he does it tastefully.
Right. In his head, he's doing it tastefully. And then the kid does the exact same thing he's doing. Yeah. And he's like, you can't leer like that. That's rude. It's like, yeah, Matt, yeah.
It's so, and like, even, and here too, he's like, tells David, like, don't tell anyone that I'm being this awesome dad figure to Olver. And it's like, you realize the entire band has adopted him, right? They all know that you're an excellent father to this child. Like, this is common knowledge.
I wouldn't say excellence.
He's pretty good.
By the band's standards.
He keeps the kid alive and entertained. He does pretty well.
I mean, most of these guys probably had shittier childhoods than Olver is currently having.
Most of these guys probably have children at home that they're not dealing with.
Ooh.
Just pretend that's not true.
Ooh, deadbeat dad army. What?
I like most of these guys too much for that to be the case.
Yeah, we're gonna choose to unheadcanon that.
Though I don't actually remember Daerid. He's like the one of the, like, it says Daerid, Talmanes, and Elysian. He's the only one of the 3 I don't immediately know.
He, I think, gets left behind with the Saladar contingent of the army when Matt and Talmanes and Elysian go to Ibudar. So he ends up being a big part of the band's story, but fades out of the spotlight for the rest of the series, if I recall correctly. Who Daerid is.
He's he's in the underground caverns firing the cannons during the last battle.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, him and Talmanes are talking back and forth. So there's that witty dialogue there. So he's the Talmanes to Talmanes.
Gotcha.
Right, and he grows the band, right? Because like Matt leaves Daerid with like a few in Saladar, and then comes back, and he's like, "Oh yeah, so I kind of have a giant army now. You want it?"
So he does better than Elysian. Poor Elysian.
Oh, Elysian.
I didn't really know you until you got your throat ripped out.
I know, right?
Sad.
Dude, the golem deaths are just the worst. Herod fell, and Elysian, like, the golem just takes out innocence and powerful like they're nothing. And then it's always just the bloodiest, undeserved deaths.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if we didn't have good reason to think otherwise, I would just attribute all the mysterious, terrible deaths, like Sarah and...
Yeah, Sarah I'm convinced was Alviarin. I think. Or maybe I could be persuaded otherwise, but...
because I just was listening to Allie and Gus talking through that section today on a podcast, and I think we never actually even get... I don't think we ever know if... No.
We get nothing. Yeah,
it could be.
The scene has zero details in it. It's one of those things where we know it's a Black Sister. It's not going to be a Forsaken. They're not going to bother.
I feel like Alviarin could have gotten that info from Elida, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, Elida's pretty much the only person who would have known that Sara might have been relevant, so maybe that's why Alviarin was there. Yeah, actually, Alviarin does make a lot of sense. All right, Daerid is the cross-class lieutenant. He's the one that actually gets elevated on merit rather than by birth, and kind of changes up the social order of the band because Matt refuses to let nobility run things.
Because he's not a bloody noble.
Right.
So the wiki's pointing out that that's part of probably why so many commoners come to the band, is because it's clear that a man can rise as high as his talents indicate, rather than just because he was born high. I don't know if I'm right about the Saladar thing, but he's an important Theta band member or whatever.
And then he introduces that Rand is coming into the camp and transition to that part of the chapter.
This is Rand being full...
My favorite crazy boy.
Yeah, he's being full out crazy Rand here.
Yeah, he's not having a good night.
I don't know, he's smiling a lot.
Oh yeah, that's...
Yay!
Mm-hmm. I like how Olver, this is probably the only times he gets to see Rand. He's like, is that the Dragon Reborn? Oh boy! And Matt's like, get out of here. Go away.
And is this is the last meeting between Matt and Rand before the last battle? The next time they get together, they do that whole, yeah, well, I rescued Moraine, I think I win thing. This is it.
The last time that they... Oh, wow.
Yikes.
Because here on out, he goes to Saladar. He's with Elaine.
Abu Dar. And he's stuck there for a while.
Yeah.
And then Caemlyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, then he's
and
in the garden with
Field
Tuon.
Marilor. Oh my god, you're
Rand
right.
walks up.
Oh, my heart.
This book 6, our final meeting between Matt and Rand.
Oh, Rand, why are you sending all your friends away?
He keeps Perrin for a little bit longer.
Yeah, not much, though.
And he has Nynaeve for a long time towards the end.
That's true.
And Min and everything, yeah.
But
yeah, well, Min's
is...
like constantly with him.
And in fairness, Matt is like the worst of all the friends. So...
Yeah. He's a really good friend, but also a really crappy friend in that he like never trusts Rand. But he also always trusts Rand. He just doesn't say what he talks about.
He's a good friend to have at a distance. Like, bring me an army. Like, he can trust him to do that. But, like, bring me a drink, maybe not so much.
I mean, I always think back to their journey in Eye of the World and just how close that brought the two of them.
Yeah, and then immediately once he learns that Rand's the dragon, then he immediately turns on him.
It's the whole Dagger Matt thing. Like, their relationship is forged in a period of time that Matt doesn't remember. And so It doesn't bear on how Matt approaches Rand through the rest of the series, but it does bear on how Rand approaches Matt.
And Rand deliberately tried to drive them away as well when he was the Dragon Reborn. That's the other thing. Like, he was, and it wasn't just a minor. He was kind of a real dick to them.
Yeah,
it's true.
Well, Matt was also a dick to him. It was pretty much just Perrin was really he was much nicer than...
Yeah.
Perrin and Loyal, man, they're the good guys. They're good friends.
I feel like Perrin is always there to support him, but he's off doing his own thing. Perrin has other priorities other than Rand.
Yeah, Perrin's independent.
Technically, Perrin abandons him more than Matt does.
You know what? That's a good point.
Because Matt always pretty much does what Rand says, but Perrin goes off to get Aiel several times without...
That's really true. Perrin is like, I will burn the whole world down for my wife. And Rand is like, well, on the one hand, I agree with you because Ilyena, but on the other hand, not helpful.
Right.
Yeah, his wife in quotation marks.
Yeah, I mean, Luce Theron is coming through Rand being like, Ilyena, I totally empathize, Perrin. You go, boy. Get it.
But, I mean, Matt spends the next couple of books trying to get... I mean, he's doing exactly... He swears to get Elaine back, and that's exactly what he tries to do. And nothing else until that wall falls.
Yeah.
It's super
Yeah,
true.
he follows through. And he gets sidetracked, but...
He abandons Elaine because shit's hitting the fan and Olver is in danger. And Elaine says, go, I've got this. That's like a very Matt time to make that choice.
Then he doesn't get much of a choice because he gets crushed by a wall, so it's not like he can...
Right, yeah, then, 10 minutes later, he's, under a pile of bricks.
And then we lose him for a book.
And then he comes back way more crotchety.
Yeah.
He's so cantankerous after that.
Yeah.
Well, his hip hurts, damn it.
Yeah, it comes through.
I would be pretty upset if I got crushed by a wall.
Yeah, no, it comes through. You can feel the invalidness and the, oh my god, it's 6 weeks and I still am stiff. You can just feel the irritation.
What happened to my bloody luck?
Yeah. But for now, he's thinking about how Aiel women are nothing but trouble with a bleak overtone because Melindra.
Melindra, the last woman he dated and killed with a knife in the chest, and a
Right.
dark friend.
And he's seeing Avienda coming over, and he's like, not another Aiel woman. Even if I'm not going to date her, they're so dangerous.
I don't understand why Rand kept her around, is what he says, because he still does not realize that
They're in love.
they're insanely in love with each other.
Yeah, well, next page. So the wind blows from that direction, does it?
I love that
Yeah.
line. It's a good, it's a very subtle way of showing that he realizes what is happening between them. I mean, he doesn't, flat out tell you. It does, but it doesn't, in fewer words.
And she wants to talk to Elaine. Oh, boy.
That feels like a very southern saying. Like, oh, honey, you know the way the wind blows on him.
Doesn't Swan use a very similar expression when she talks about Min?
I imagine is just a sailing metaphor.
Yeah.
Something about fish.
Fish, wind, sails, whatever, ropes.
Wanted to point out that Rand at first says he needs Matt to do something, and then when he actually says what the request is, he phrases it as a want. I don't know if that means anything, but it struck me.
The need to me has a very Taviran pullingness to it. Whenever he says need.
And at the bottom of the page, he says, I want you to bring Elaine.
With Rand and Elaine, I don't think, the Taviranness and the need and the pull, that's all sort of all need, want. It's all tied together.
Well, and he does try to, at least at this point, he still tries to maintain, a less authoritarian relationship with them sometimes. Even though he knows he can't in the long run, he tries to pretend that they can just be normal friends occasionally. He gives up on that, though.
I like the detail here that Matt has gotten a little bit of fine taste when it talks about what's inside his tent, and that all of his furniture is black lacquered with lines of gilt. If a man had coin, he might as well spend it on something. Okay, Matt, you're starting to get a little bit bougie. I like it. Man needs a little lace.
This is the same Matt that made fun of Rand for having one nice coat.
Mm-hmm.
He does really slowly progress into a very high fashion man.
Yeah, I never noticed the small ways that he changes. Like most of the characters, I sort of assume there's two states that they exist in and they just flip from one book to another. But no, Matt's taste for fine things creeps in the oddest little passages.
Kind of similar to Nynaeve, who slowly stopped complaining about the necklines and tightness of silks.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, Matt and Nynaeve both leaving the Two Rivers he's in boots, beat up boots and homespun, and she's in good stout Two Rivers, and then they meet up later and she's in this green silky thing and he's in lacy jacket with collar and tails and a fancy, high boot, and looking at each other being well, at least I kept to the true Two Rivers.
I need this as a comic.
Yeah.
Yes, oh my god, they are such wonderful mirrors of each other.
They both look fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, the signet ring. The silver medallion, heavy silver medallion hanging around his chest. It might as well be bling.
Right, and she's got this gold engagement ring.
Sometimes you see his foxhead medallion sometimes in the art, and sometimes it looks really fancy and cool, and other times it's just really boring and plain.
Yeah. They do describe it as palm-sized, which is huge for a piece of silver. But yeah. Oh, and yeah, Nynaeve with the paralysis net, just jewelry everywhere.
Right.
Some of it not matching.
None of it matches. Magic jewelry cannot match, it is known.
I always kind of picture his medallion kind of I don't know if you saw The Witcher, but his Witcher medallion.
Yeah, that is kind of how I've imagined it. I've seen a lot of art where it's more three-dimensional, and I'm just I don't know. I feel like the disc makes more sense.
Now I'm considering, though, because the Witcher medallion varies from the game to the show, so I'm not sure which one I'm thinking of more.
No, I've only watched the show.
I'm, again, TV show talk, but I'm really excited to see the physical objects in the TV show.
Oh, yeah, because then you can buy them outside of the show and finally own things.
Shut up and take all of my money.
I'm okay, I've saved up all the stimulus money for the... I will stimulate the fuck out of the economy when that stuff comes out.
Oh my god. Yes. I wanted to ask if you guys had any thoughts about what Rand is being so distracted by throughout this whole scene. Just general madness, or do you think there's something specific on his mind that's making him so weird to Matt.
I just assumed his plan is getting so complicated at this point, and he's having to deal with so many moving pieces that keeping track of it all on his own is kind of distracting.
I was really hoping to be the one who looks smart and ask you that question, so damn it, you beat me to the punch.
I'm learning.
You are learning. You're discovering my techniques and how to look like I know what I'm doing. Ask the questions when you don't know the answers. No, I assume it's just Lewis Theron talking in his head. We have seen a lot of LTT over the beginning of this book when we're in his head, and we're going to see a lot more of it in the rest of this book. So from an outside perspective, I assume the distraction is simply he's having a conversation in his head with the madman.
That was my inclination as well. I mean, the plans, many moving pieces thing makes sense, but the distractedness definitely is like LTT is like making commentary on Rand's internal monologue, right?
It's a shame we don't get to see it because I love his internal monologue. His crazy lines are phenomenal.
Yeah, seeing Rand from the outside is so trippy.
I like here where we get a little bit of a summary of the plan that Matt and Rand had. A few more days and I'll be in Tyr. The ferries will take the band across the river. A few days beyond that will see us with Weirmont. It's too bloody late to go meddling. Now, both that gives us an idea of what he's planning to do with the band. Also, the fact that I'm guessing Weirmont has spilled the beans. Because he's a Darkfriend.
Oh, Darkfriend alert.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's too, yeah.
If Weirmont's in on these plans, that means they've been reported up the chain. And Samael knows exactly what's going on and knows that this army is not going to attack him because that's not the plan. The band is a distraction.
Well, Samael doesn't necessarily know if Wyramon's not in his network of dark friends, right?
I think he is, though. I think Weirmont is a servant of Samael.
Yeah, that's fair. It is the most logical Forsaken to be in charge of him.
I think that's the one who's pulling his strings.
Yeah, that does make the most sense. But it doesn't necessarily have to be. There's lots of dark friend, or lots of Forsaken that don't know what Wyramon knows just because he's a dark friend.
I am making a few leaps there, no doubt. But, realizing the whole plan's laid out, that Wyramon knows the whole thing, that tells me a lot about how confident Samael is when he's talking to Grendel.
Mm-hmm.
In saying that army will never come for me.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I hadn't caught that before. Nice.
I was going to do a Dark Friend alert on Weirmont, but then I sort of took that to its logical conclusion. It was like, wait, what does that mean if he's in on the plan?
Forsaken spy alert more than a Dark Friend alert.
Exactly. Competently incompetent, as Weirmont he is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes I forget he was a dark friend just because he was such a reprehensible dude before that. I already hated the guy before even knowing he was actually evil.
Yeah, I was willing to chalk him up to the Elida category of just petty and small and selfish. But no, that was actually a cover.
Yeah, that was cover for being an actual terrible person.
And then there's Elida who you're like, please have a better reason for being terrible. Nope, you're just terrible.
I mean, Fane.
Yeah, true. But he had fertile ground to work with her.
That's true. He does tend to work with fertile ground. Niall, Fane.
Niall, Elida. Oh, the Kyrianan Lord who's trying to date Moiraine's cousin.
Yeah.
Crap, what the hell is his name? He dies in Farmatting. I know everything about him but his freaking name.
Uh-huh. Oh, I'm right there with you. Is it Torum?
Yes, Torum Ryzen.
The whole point is Rand is here because in the last chapter he was spying on Suon, who showed the map to Egwene in Teleron Riyadh in the Stone of Tyr.
Yes. And
so he saw where Saladar is, so now he knows where Elaine is, so he can send the band to get her. And he's been freaking out about getting Elaine in power for a long time now.
Yeah, just the beginning of him trying to hand her the throne, and she's very indignant about that. For reasons that I understand, but are also very obnoxious.
I'm nodding.
I think that it might have been the more responsible decision to go not to Abu Dar, but to go to Andor right now.
Yeah.
For her.
Yeah.
She knows there's no ruler there. Whether or not someone... Yeah, she knows her mother's not in power. She thinks her mother's dead.
Right,
she knows Rand's taken power. She knows Camlin is desperately needing a ruler. And yes, the weather's important, but Nynaeve can take care of that.
I never understood why she was so comfortable tossing aside her responsibilities as daughter heir for potentially fixing the weather with Nynaeve.
Arguably, it's kind of her family's main trait. I mean,
It's true.
Ooh,
That is
true.
They're
True.
real good at throwing aside their responsibility.
The things they were raised for their entire lives and have
Mhm.
supposedly had engraved on their bones are just like, oh, shiny. I'm going to go do something else now.
Galad does all right.
Yeah, well, Galad wasn't ever expected to hold a position, right?
He was supposed to be king of Kyrian.
Was he?
Was he?
I mean,
Well, I
not
mean, when
really.
Terrangale had a small toddler.
Right.
but,
That was
like,
Terrangale's goals. Is he wanted to use the Morgase's claim to the throne that eventually Elaine uses, and his own, right? Like, combined to put his son on the throne of Kyrian, while his
Right.
daughter ruled
Andor.
Andor.
But Galad was never raised as a Trakand. So
Yeah.
clearly we have the answer to nature versus nurture.
Yeah, it's not in his blood to just be horribly irresponsible.
Despite being half siblings with the Trakans.
You know, half Rand's brother, so maybe that's where he gets the responsibility gene, is from the man-tier half of his blood.
He's older,
I'll
right?
headcanon it. Yeah.
Maybe Rand gets his
Yeah.
responsibility from his blood then. Galad's gonna take all of the achievement and just claim that he was the one responsible.
Galad wouldn't do that.
He deserves some more glory. He does really well.
Galad's gonna get to marry Barbie and live in a seaside palace for the rest of his life. He's fine.
Without an arm, he lost a pretty significant thing.
Galad is to Rand as Neville is to Harry Potter.
Yes. Oh my god.
Except really handsome and
But that comparison of like, it could have been you. It really could have been for just a few different things.
Mm-hmm. And they both get the hand cut off.
Wait,
So there's
what?
There's like Rand and Galad both get their hands cut off. So there's like a
I was
lot of
like-
parallels between the two of
I
them.
thought I forgot
Yeah, I was
something
like,
important
I
about
don't remember
Neville.
hands getting chopped off.
Sorry, yeah, it's different.
Like, I know he cut a head off a snake, but
I never actually thought about the fact that Galad and Rand both lose
Mm-hmm.
the same
There's a
hand.
lot of parallels between the two of them when you go through their storylines.
do they lose the same hand or opposite hand?
Yep,
Yeah.
same hand.
I think Galad
Ah.
loses more like the lower half of his arm, whereas Rand just loses his hand.
Yeah,
But
he
it's the
loses like
same-
straight up to the elbow.
Yeah, but it's the same limb.
Has a stump on his like wrist is still there.
And they both get healed by Aes Sedai so that they don't bleed out or have weird scarring or anything. They both get promptly healed for the actual cut, or burn in Rand's case.
I actually found out recently that a friend of mine was in a car accident and lost her arm.
I saw that GoFundMe.
Yeah.
Or whatever platform it's on. Yeah, that's horrible.
And I was just like, we had worked together, not for a super long period of time, but we'd worked in places next to each other, and we both got a job packaging the ketchup bottles. I don't know if I talked about that.
Oh yeah,
Or,
I remember the ketchup
yeah.
bottle factory.
So we worked next to each other on the line packaging ketchup for like weeks, like just talking and hanging out. And yeah, so I just, but then of course that ended when COVID happened. And then I just hadn't heard from her in a while. And yeah, I was just on Facebook because I hopped on Facebook because I deleted my Facebook, and then long story, I had to recreate it to make ads happen on Instagram. Anyway,
we do it for you guys, okay?
Anyway.
We do it for the audience.
So being on Facebook, I it pops up and it's like, here's what you missed. And like, it was like, you missed the fact. And I was just, I don't know. I can only imagine what she's going through. And I haven't had a chance to talk with her or anybody. I just saw the news story and stuff and was just like, oh my God, that's absolutely crazy.
Very surprising thing to learn.
Yeah. And I don't even know how to process it or how to I haven't
Right.
expressed sympathy or anything like that. Cause I don't know how to be like, my first thought was great, cool prosthetics. But that's
Yeah.
maybe not the first thing someone wants to hear.
Not what you should put on the first card. No.
Right.
Yeah. Expressing condolences is not my thing, so
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
weird, but at the same time, it can be really simple. Just the fact that people are out there thinking about you, that's all
Yeah.
you need to know, right? Just I heard you're having a crappy time. I'm thinking positive thoughts your way. Let me know if I can do more, right? I mean, it's not hard, but it's hard.
I found out about it much later than, we're not in super close friend circles, but
Well, all the more reason to be like, hey, so the internet told me that you're apparently having a bad week.
month, year. Gosh, and you thought your 2020 was bad.
Oof. Yeah, right. For sure.
See, my thought is at least you only lost an arm. That's like the first thing that comes to my head, so,
Right, like, well, you can survive without an arm.
And it said basically it was she got hit by a semi, and it said other than the arm, she was just cut, scrapes, and bruises, no other major trauma. So, I mean, yay.
Yeah, I mean,
if
it's a loss.
If you're gonna be
but...
in an accident, that's an okay way to walk away from it. So what you're saying is that Galad did not lose nothing. Bringing it back to the series, Galad has a very big hurdle to get over as the last battle wraps up.
And that losing arms happens. It's not just a trope in fantasy.
The arms get lost.
Not
arms
always
get lost,
nearly as cool of ways.
No.
Oh, there's a good book that just got posted in the Discord. There is no good card for this. What to say and do when life is scary, awful, and unfair to people you love. Apparently the answers to these questions are in that book.
But reading? Who likes that?
Losing an arm feels like such a fantasy trope. Between
Luke
Galad
Skywalker.
and Skywalker and Golden Boy from Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Jamie.
Lannister.
Jamie. And
like, who is Golden Boy?
It's just like one of those things, like, surely it doesn't actually happen in real life. No, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Rand starts telling Matt exactly what he's going to do, what's going to happen, and what's waiting for him. And he is wrong on every single point that he makes for the next, 4 paragraphs. And I find it hilarious.
Yeah, though I also find it hilarious that Perrin actually kind of executes that plan of gathering up a bunch of Dragonsworn by marching around with banners. That actually kind of is part of Perrin's arc in the end. Matt completely fails, and Perrin kind of picks up that slack.
And in a way, Elaine does as well, because she gets the band to follow her, and they pick up the band grows massive behind.
Oh, as the Saladar army is moving?
As the Saladar army is moving, the band follows them, and there's a line where the Saladar army grows the entire time, but the band is growing not as much, but as well.
So yeah, Perrin and Egwene kind of pick up where Matt totally fails to do his assigned task.
Yeah, when Matt gets back to the band, it is massive compared to what he left it as.
Yeah.
I wonder how much that dynamic happened in the Two Rivers. Perrin and Egwene happening to end up doing the chores Matt should have done.
At least in this case, it's not entirely Matt's fault, though. I mean, they kind of basically sidetrack his entire mission and just force him to stay.
That's legit.
Back in the Two Rivers, it was always his choice. I mean...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, someone's got to cover for you when you're off catching badgers.
God, what a weird thing to do. Catch a badger.
If we can hop back, I just want to point out this passage where Matt is like, why do you need me to get Elaine? Because that seems like not a thing I should do. And he says, I don't understand why you need me. Jump through one of your gateways, give her a kiss, scoop her up, and jump back. Aviendha fastened an outraged stare on him. You would have thought he had advised kissing her. Just let's think about the one time that Aviendha and Rand were kissing and how much that kind of totally describes everything about their relationship.
Yeah.
I didn't make that connection.
Literally. Jump through a gateway, grab the girl, make out. It's like, oh, that accurately describes where Aviendha has her hang-ups with both Elaine and with Rand. Nice job, Matt. This is why she's staring at you.
This is why Matt steps on people's toes and they call him a lout. And he goes, what? I didn't say anything.
Because he doesn't know any of that context. He's pulling words out of thin air. But it's just like...
But lucky Matt, he manages to always put his foot in his mouth.
Anyhow, I just had to point that out because it's hilarious.
Basically says, I'm going to put the band 20 miles south of Saladar. And you are going to basically ride in slowly. I think there's a point where Matt is like, I could do it in one day, but we're going to take a nice, slow 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, then this whole paragraph is just like, yeah, all wrong. There's maybe 50 Aes Sedai. No, it's closer to 300. They're probably frightened enough you don't have to do more than loom and look. And there's a...
Tell them what to do. They'll fall in line.
And Matt walks in there going, yeah, they could kick my ass with both hands tied behind their back. They've got Gareth Bryn, a bigger army, and Aes Sedai. 300 Aes Sedai, and a shit ton of apprentices.
Yeah, his odds are pretty slim.
Rand is not using his brain for this plan.
And he's not sending in a big enough force to loom.
I mean, there's no reason Rand would think that there are that many people.
Perhaps.
Fair.
Yeah,
But he underestimates them, too.
he does. Everyone underestimates how many people are in there. Just like they underestimate the Black Tower. Like, they're underestimating each other on both sides.
Yeah, and he also couldn't possibly know that they have Gareth Bryn to lead their entire army.
True. That rumor is probably not super believable at this point.
Yeah, or even that widespread. Have they even really started recruiting an army yet? I mean, I guess they have.
With Bryn there, yes. But it's very mild until they have an Amerlin to focus their efforts.
And I feel like the traveling as well really builds up the size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas here, they're just pulling locally. I don't think the Alterns or Murandis will give you much trouble. Okay, that's a lie. They would have if he'd...
Just ridden 6,000 men.
Yeah. How many birds with one stone, Matt? You ride through Altara and Murandi with 6,000 men and draw the dragon sword out after you, and you may hand me both countries.
That's a little more optimistic than he probably should be. Surprisingly optimistic.
One thing I wanted to note is almost everything that leads up to Matt meeting Tuon involves the dice rolling in his head, and I noticed we don't have that here.
Oh, I never noticed that weren't there.
Because absolutely none of it is going to go well.
And none of it matters. None of this is fateful for him.
And none of it really is any effect of Matt. Not yet.
And there's nothing random about it either. Rand is very systematic about this.
I was wondering if we just don't have the dice yet, or if this is just sort of like, but it feels like this is very much a change in his fate, right? This is Rand coming to him and like just wrenching him in a different direction than he was going.
Right, but it's not setting his path. It's just resetting it, if that makes sense. Like, it's not, you don't know, like Matt, there's a lot of choices Matt can make to get into different fateful situations, branching out from this moment where Rand reaches in and tweaks with everything.
Yeah, and like you said, there's really no chance involved. It's directed to him without question, and usually it involves games of chance when his dice start rolling.
Though Matt is very, like, he just gets so mad at Rand, like, out of nowhere. He goes from being cautious to being super angry so fast that it's like, this could have been a fateful moment, but the lack of dice says it's not.
And then he just kind of gives up.
Though the dice are very ephemeral at this point, right? He hasn't really worked out what the dice mean.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure he's really heard the dice. He's heard dice rolling, but I'm not sure he's heard the dice, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And I if it's happened just a tiny bit at this point, or it hasn't happened yet.
It's one of those things we've been trying to keep an eye out for, but Jordan is so good at writing those things in subtly that even on these really close read-throughs, you have to like read the entire series just to find that first moment where you hear the dice rattling.
Read the whole series just for the dice.
Yeah. And I think the first comment we get is very vague about whether he's actually hearing the dice or whether dice are rolling. He just like mentions dice. Dice, baby.
God, no.
Alex and I are just, no. Sit down.
Just at the same time. That's enough. Sorry. Under pressure.
So, are you going to wrap this chapter up?
Yeah, ignoring Seth.
You're like, I'm done, I quit.
Choosing to ignore Seth. Matt decides he's helping. Yeah, Matt realizes that he's not, going to be able to budge Rand's decision, so he just kind of acquiesces to it.
And then he is like, yeah, it'll take us 2 hours to get ready because I'm not rushing for you, Rand.
Mm-hmm. That's really fast for an army to get ready, though.
I know, right? It's like,
yeah.
I'll give you fast, but not really fast.
And then when I was reading this, I had a question just for you guys. There's a line in one paragraph that's all in italics, and it says, "And if she tries Mistress Snoot on with me too often, I'll bloody well kick her." Which I get is because Elaine always has her nose in there. I was just wondering, the sentence says "on with me" on mine, and it just seems like a typo or something.
I think no, it's in mine too.
Because for me, it makes more sense if it says, "and if she tries Mr. Snoot with me or on me." But "on with me" seems odd.
I agree, it's clunky.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys thought that was an error or if I was just...
It's always made sense to me.
Having done that a lot where you choose between two different words and then just end up writing both of them on accident.
So you're looking at this through your writer's
I've just
eyes.
experienced that a lot of times, and where both are correct, but you put them both together, and then it's like, well... It's a little...
Oh, so what he's saying, so here's the construction. she tries Mr. Snoot on like trying a dress on with me. So if she tries Mr. Snoot on, that's like if she tries the green dress on with me too often, I'll bloody well kick her.
Okay.
That makes it make
That
sense.
would, yeah, in that context, it would make sense. Because Mr. Snoot is just such an odd descriptor.
It's the construction of tries on and then with me, and those two you're not saying on with, you're saying tries on and then with me.
And I was thinking more of a description of a personality instead of like a personality type itself.
Yeah, it's like putting on this personality is how he's describing that. So, yeah, I know. I'll admit that the way those two phrases come together does make it a little odd, but
yeah, that makes sense.
I would say, and if she puts Mr. Snoot on with me too often, I'll bloody well kick her. I think if replace tries with put, I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
This is what happens when you start talking to an author and they start nitpicking the language of another author. It's like, I think I would construct that sentence slightly differently because I think it conveys the tonal. Okay.
It's the only sentence that I just was like, and the Mr. Snoot thing, I don't remember him ever calling her that again or before.
No, he doesn't.
So it was just really out of place and odd to me.
Putting her nose up in the air and like...
Yeah, it made sense. I was just confused.
He's thinking of his sisters, right? He starts the thing with, I'll treat her like my own sister. So he's considering, like, what are my sisters like? And then binning Elaine into that category.
I'm not going to pretend that Matt has more than one sister that matters. I mean, I don't know a single other Cawthon sibling name.
I don't know them either, but I know they exist.
I'm not sure Matt knows them either.
Bodwin and Eldrin.
That's right.
Not Eldrin.
I'm gonna say, like, he remembers the oldest ones because they annoy him, but the youngest one, he's like, the babies.
When I learned that Egwene had siblings, I was completely floored. Like, I had no idea. I think it was because I was looking into, like, the Ravens prologue or something for Eye of the World, and I saw that she had siblings, and I was like, what? Since when? She literally has never mentioned that.
Can I just say, I convinced someone to start reading Eye of the World, and the copy they bought had ravens in it, and they read ravens and were like, this is terrible, I'm not going any.
Kind of spoils the entire plot.
And I told her, I said, it's got ravens in it, don't read that, skip it. She's like, well, I don't want to miss anything.
No, you just missed the whole series.
Yeah, I looked through it, and it kind of spoils a bunch of stuff. It's like...
Oh, it's terrible.
Why?
Terrible. Yeah, it poisons the whole first book, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's no good.
It's bad. And if you want more context, I'm pretty sure we released a special episode about that, so go back and look in the feed, because I was not kind. It's probably the only chapter that Jordan has ever written that I have been extremely unkind to, and in a lot of ways, I believe it was written by the editors.
Yeah.
Obviously not Robert Jordan's writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's very, like, fan service, but according to the publisher, advertiser, marketer, not according to anyone remotely artistic.
I would not be surprised if it was commissioned by the publisher and written by another author.
Yeah, I would buy that. Well, I wouldn't buy it because it's a piece of trash, but... I
know. I just... Either that or Jordan had an off day. I mean, I guess he can't be perfect. But for my sake, I'm going to assume he's perfect and work backwards from there. So...
I will headcanon with that.
I mean, that's pretty much what this podcast is all about. It's just assuming that this is a consistent, perfectly realized narrative from start to finish with no inconsistencies, and then trying to justify that with really complicated logic.
Or noticing that RJ actually thought that out ahead of you and has planted an Easter egg for your 75th read.
Yes, that one too.
Like here, when Rand says, I need an hour or so myself, doesn't explain why, it's clearly so he can learn to make a gateway. He needs to stand there for an hour holding the power so that he can make the gateway.
Oh.
But does RJ ever explain that? No, not until we get to the Sanderson books where we actually get the mechanics of how this sort of stuff works.
Right, that he has to learn the space well enough. I mean, we learn about how skimming you have to know where you're going.
Oh, actually, no, we learn it with the circle. When the Bowl of the Winds gets used, because they held the power on that spot for so long, they know it well enough to make the gateway.
That holding the power helps.
Yeah, so that's what this line is here, but like it's not important that he doesn't even explain it for a book and a half. A book. It's the next book that they'd use the Bowl of the Winds, right?
No, 2 books.
No, it's Path of Daggers.
Right, because the next book is Finding the Bowl.
Because it's my least favorite
the opening
book.
of the next book. Yeah. Looking for the pig-kissing bowl.
We'll always know which one it was in, because it was the reason I like that one the least.
That's fair. That is fair. So yeah, then we get the news that the girls, the Two Rivers girls, are going to the tower.
Right, yeah, Rand lets Matt know, oh, by the way, your sister's going to be Aes Sedai. What? Like,
yeah, Matt spends the next page being like, Bode? Aes Sedai?
That always felt like one of those things that's a setup for what happens after the book to me, because they don't really factor into the plot a ton. At least Bode.
No, but it does sort of set up, like, Matt's never getting away from Aes Sedai. His own sister's Aes Sedai. Like,
yeah.
He carries the gene.
Yeah.
Him and Tuon both carry the gene.
Oh my god, his children are going to be able to
Absolutely.
channel, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Oh my god, they're going to be super... Because he's got the old blood of Manetheren, plus the Sean-Chan power, that because they didn't breed out their channelers, they...
Yeah, we know Tuon can learn to channel, and we know that Matt's got sisters that can channel. Like, it's just, he's going to have channeling kids. It's just what it is.
And then his wife will color them.
I can just imagine him, like, being like, go to your room. No, channel. Ha, medallion, spank. Like, just imagine Matt disciplining Aes Sedai children, which it wouldn't happen because they wouldn't. Well, how about this? Uncle Matt babysitting Rand's children who can channel from the cradle, and he's the only one who can babysit them because he has the medallion that protects him from their channeling.
Yes, I need this. A graphic novel in my life.
Uncle Matt raising Rand's four children that can all channel.
4 children. Oh, God. Yeah.
Well,
no, that's obvious. That's obvious kids. Sorry, but it would apply to Elaine's kids just as well.
Yeah, we talked about this extensively on one of the podcasts, but I'm convinced that Avienda's going, the 4 children she's going to have at the same time is through a birthing ceremony, not through actual physical birth.
Oh, right, yeah, we disagreed about this. I remember that.
Yeah, I would really prefer that, just because I don't like the idea of her having 4 kids from birth, because, I don't know, the fact that Rand has twins and then quadruplets, just kind of, I'm not a big fan.
I'm going to just return to the concept of Taviran sperm, and then we can move on.
Yeah, it makes sense. I just personally don't like it.
I like the idea of Min having 2 children, Elaine having 2 children, and then Avienda bonding them in a birthing ceremony.
That does have a lot of symmetry to it.
Rand's just going to be out here being a deadbeat dad for so many kids.
I like the symmetry of that, but I don't like the plot of it. I really just want him spawning babies every time he looks at a woman for too long.
Giants.
I just like that iteration of the story better. The birthing ceremony is just too neat and tidy. I need more messy life in it.
It is a little more parallel with the Legend of Thor, who just has babies with everyone he looks at crosswise.
Right? Yes, precisely. But with, less assault and trickery. We're talking about Zeus?
Just watch the show Blood of Zeus.
I'm going to say that Rand was a bit better on the consent front.
Oh, Zeus. Yes, definitely. Right. Although he is convinced that he raped Min the first time they had sex.
Yeah, and then she slaps him silly, and then they have a good old time after that. Whereas Zeus is like, I'm a swan, and that makes it even weirder. And
why are you fucking a swan?
Leda and the Swan, man. The Swan...
Yeah.
There's a couple of versions of that story, and none of them make me feel comfortable.
He's pretty alright in the new show. Blood of Zeus show on Netflix. Just came out recently.
That was the anime one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Made by the people who did the show Castlevania.
Yeah, that's a style, man. I watched it. I
love Castlevania. I think it's so good.
I'm not disagreeing that it's not good. It just doesn't make me feel good about myself. It's definitely like it's just bloody and horrible, and like bad shit happens to people. And
yeah, that season 3 was just phenomenal.
Not saying I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying my emotional fragility right now can't handle it.
Blood of Zeus is less depressing.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. But I still didn't quite finish it. I got through like everything the last 2 episodes, I think. Yeah. I should go back and finish it. My attention span in quarantine has been terrible. I've been starting a ton of shows and not finishing them. I just can't seem to stick with anything long term.
It's an excellent metaphor for how we're not remotely close to done with this chapter at 1:53.
We are. We have like 4 pages.
Out of...
like 10 pages.
8.
I'm just saying.
Well, now he gets the letter.
Well, first we have Matt promising, one of the few things he ever promises.
Okay, that's true.
He promises to stay with Elaine, which technically he breaks because a wall falls on him.
That's not fair.
But he does everything in his power to stay with her.
So I just thought that's important because we very rarely get Matt promising things, and there we go. That was a promise. And then we get the letter, which is the more important thing to note, for sure.
I like how speculation about how could she get there unless she discovered that trick with gateways. Yeah, pretty much. That's what Matt's smart. He figures stuff out like that pretty quick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he doesn't figure out what's up with this letter. He knows that it's written in a feminine hand, but he doesn't recognize the seal, and I think he should.
I read that, and I was like, would he really not recognize Moraine's handwriting or seal?
Right? I find that very suspicious.
He was around her so often. It was,
not suspicious, I find that weird.
I can't imagine that he ever looked at her seal. I can't imagine. Well, first of all, like, she didn't make a big issue about the fact that she was noble for a long time. That was something, like, you almost didn't figure out right away.
But this is not her personal seal. This is the seal of House Damodred, which is incredibly similar to, like, all the Kyrianan iconography. It's a spreading tree with a crown. Like, he knows she's Kyrianan. He knows what he knows what the icons of Kyrian are.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even think to attach Kyrian to this letter.
I think it's just a lack of importance. Rand's like, can you give this to Tom? He's like, yeah, sure. Like, that he doesn't even give it a moment's thought. Like, he attaches no importance to it whatsoever.
Which I feel like that's kind of weird, though, because it's a letter from the Dragon Reborn going to another person that he knows is fairly important.
Yeah, but it's Rand and Tom and Matt. They traveled together. It's, like...
True. That is his buddy.
Yeah, and it is very deliciously ironic that he repeatedly thinks this letter has nothing to do with me.
Right.
And in that letter are the words that send him, Tom, and Noel into the Tower of Genshin.
Right. This is and yeah, in case we didn't say it, this is Moraine's letter that lays out everything that the three of them have to do to rescue her from the tower.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's just really incompetent with letters.
This is the my dearest Tom letter, and he's just like, okay, this has nothing to do with me and will never have any bearing on my life whatsoever.
This letter and the Varen letter, he's just like, whew.
One of the things I love is over the next 4 books, every time we see Tom, he pulls out the letter in front of Matt and just sort of waves it in his face, and he's like, yeah. Come on, ask about the letter. Ask about the letter. Come on, Matt. Ask about the letter.
I can't point at that guy.
Okay, yeah, but he's like, it's just one of those subtle things that on a reread, I didn't realize how fucking often we see Jordan have Tom pull that letter out and wave it in Matt's face.
Mm-hmm.
Until you know the contents of the letter. And you realize that he's trying to get him to ask about it so he can go rescue Moraine because he's in love with her.
Mm-hmm. But Moraine couldn't be rescued until after Veins of Gold or whatever, so that's why Matt's so damn stubborn.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, Ta'Veren make sure that happens at the right time.
Yeah, Ta'Veren gonna Ta'Veren.
That's why in the letter it says you have to wait until he asks about it, because he's not going to ask about it until it's the right time.
Right, because Moraine is like, I don't need to get out of here until until the world needs me out of here. I'll just be tortured. It's fine. Don't rush.
I think it's more of you don't have a fucking chance until you've got Noel on your side and all the information and all that kind of stuff. Like,
it's true. It's true. But Moraine's just so blue. She's just so selfless. She's like, leave me in the torture chamber until the Ta'Veren says I'm done cooking. It's great. I really like that Matt has this moment, and then he's like, Olver, who I know is sneaking around, go get my commanders. I'm not even going to pretend that you're hiding. No.
That's right. I forgot that he was supposed to have left, and he's
there was
peeking
a
around the
squeak
corner.
Just outside the door flap. Olver's so cute.
Yes, Matt.
And the sound of scurrying feet.
Then I really liked Avienda's line of, I know how to follow battle leader. Just the fact that Matt kind of the fact that he had to clarify that she had to follow his command, but as an Aiel, there's no doubt that she was going to at least know how to follow the chain of command in that situation.
She's not a civilian or a non-combatant. She's a soldier. She knows how this works.
The whole time, Matt's trying to be like, all right, so how am I going to keep her from gutting Elaine?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And, like we see here, when she startles him by starting to sharpen the knife on the stone. He's like, what the hell is that? And she's starting to get the knife ready for basically cutting her own throat.
Yeah. She doesn't want to stab Elaine. She wants to stab herself.
She wants Elaine to stab her.
Elaine to stab herself, yeah. That's pretty much just suicide by somebody else. I mean...
I mean, I get it, but it's just like...
And that kind of brings us to the end of the map part.
Well, we just have to read Matt's closing of this section, right? I mean... Because it's hilarious.
Alright, so clearing his throat, he stuck the unlit pipe between his teeth and bent to study the map. The band could probably cover the distance from the clearing to Saladar in a day if he pushed, even in that wooded terrain. He intended to take 2, or even 3. Give the Aes Sedai plenty of warning. He did not want them any more frightened than they already were. A frightened Aes Sedai was almost a contradiction. Even wearing the medallion, he was not eager to learn what a frightened Aes Sedai might do. He felt Avienda's eyes on the back of his neck, heard a rasping sound. Sitting cross-legged against the tent wall, she was drawing her belt knife along a honing stone and watching him. When Nelician entered with Darid and Timanis, he greeted them with, "We are going to tickle some Aes Sedai into the chin, rescue a mule, and put a snip-nosed girl on the lion throne. Oh yes, that's Avienda. Don't look at her crosswise, or she'll try and cut out your throat and probably slit her own by mistake." The woman laughed as if he had made the funniest joke in the world. She did not stop sharpening her knife, though.
I just love that. Matt gets Aiel humor without knowing he's getting Aiel humor.
Well, I like this, and probably slit her own by mistake. That's actually what the knife is for.
Right. It's a level of getting the Aiel humor that, like, again, he's throwing words out there, and it has way more meaning to her than even he realizes.
Right. Definitely.
And it's the kind of thing that Aiel would find funny. Her whole situation, and Aiel would find funny, so.
And then we move on to Egwene getting, stopping being spanked. Whipped. We can go with whipped.
And then she tries to get spanked some more.
I don't know if whipped is really better, but...
Would you want to do, like, a first paragraph read? I was going to say Elaine.
Excuse me?
Aradia?
Sure, since you guys have done reads, I guess I should take a chance to do some of this. For a moment, Egwene could not understand why the pain had stopped increasing. Then she pushed herself up from the carpets of her tent and stood, sobbing so hard she quivered. She wanted very much to blow her nose. She did not know how long she had been crying that hard. She only knew she felt on fire from the tops of her hips to the backs of her knees. Standing still was a problem she barely mastered. The shift she had thought of as scant protection had been discarded some time back. Tears rolled down her face, and she stood there and bawled. Sorelia and Amis and Bear regarded her soberly, and they were not the only ones. The most of the rest were sitting about on cushions or stretched out, talking and enjoying tea served by a slender Gaishine. A woman, thank the light. They were all women, wise ones and apprentices. Women Egwene had told she was Aes Sedai. She was grateful that just letting them think she was did not count. She could not have survived that.
Do you think the wise ones deliberately kept men out of there because they understood that she would feel more shamed?
I just kind of took it as the men weren't as involved in having to meet her toe, and that's why they weren't present. I don't know if it was intentional or not. I mean, towards the end they mentioned having Rourke also have to meet her toe to him.
I think that it was a slight courtesy to her. They don't understand her hang-up on men and nudity and all that, but I think that they understand it enough to not add that to this. But at the same time, the whole comment about Ruark at the end does kind of throw that into, it might just be a coincidence.
I'm just not sure if they really gave it much necessarily thought at the moment of her actual punishment.
Yeah, and there is that time later with the prisoner Aes Sedai where Varen gives Sorelia a list of things that would humiliate a wetlander, which also speaks to the fact that they really don't get the mechanics behind why Egwene would be grateful for all women. So yeah, maybe it's just a coincidence because, like you said, wise one business, right? The women are way more involved in Egwene's life among the Aiel.
I mean, I was thinking maybe the whole thing with Ruark is like, you have to meet your toe to him later, but we wouldn't involve him in this because the naked beating.
No, I think it says, like, I know Ruark will regret not being here tonight.
Yeah, and she hopes that she can make it up to him in a different way, but...
Yeah, she's like,
he's got a strong arm. I would not want him to take a belt to me.
Does she ever meet her toe to him?
No. I think she,
It's pretty much forgiven.
I just assume she goes to the grave.
Yeah. I mean, she meets her toe to the Aiel collectively in general, so...
Yeah.
And there is a point later where, like, someone So I think Mullane, she also has to meet her totem Mullane, but Mullane learns she's having twins and says, "Oh, you've got no toe towards me."
Yeah, and I'm naming one of the kids after you.
So there's a moment later where basically any sort of remnants of toe she might have had to people pretty much just gets forgotten, and I kind of think that's the last we hear about it.
Yeah. And then we have 2 paragraphs that's mostly just her talking about which people hit her the hardest.
Yeah, it's a very internal monologue of, like, cringe.
We kind of already discussed the ones that did hit harder.
I think they're her sort of fellow apprentices rather than the other wise ones.
And then she has the "only you know the worth of your honor" line.
Oh, I love that line.
Yeah, it's...
Like, this entire situation, and this is, I think, what really sets her up for being a prisoner in the White Tower, is that she didn't have to do this. At any point, she could have said no to continuing on with this experience. The entire thing was her choice, and that's exactly what happens to her in the White Tower. Is she could have left the whole time, and she doesn't.
Agency is super important.
Yeah. Even though she's miserable, she's suffering, she's embarrassed, she has agency, and that makes all the difference.
At the same time, she did kind of have to do it, though. In the long run.
Only for her pride.
Well, the pride and the fact that if she didn't, would they respect her enough to work with her in the future?
Oh, yeah, I mean, consequences, sure.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's her ambition. That's not, she can't escape.
Yeah, she could have walked away from it, and it would have just been a lack of ambition.
It's take what you want and pay for it. She's willing to pay.
Yeah.
God, this line here, "What are you waiting for?" Her voice still shook. That whole...
Ugh.
When Kate Redding reads that, as, you know, this is one of those chapters I bet Kate Redding was, like, sobbing over.
Oh, yeah, totally. That, like, anger, world-changing, just power. Oh, my God, I bet totally. I have a journey to make tonight, in case you've forgotten.
Yeah.
Get on with it.
Keep beating me. I'm busy.
Right? And then it's, this woman has no toe towards me. Like, you can continue to lie there and let us beat you, but none of us are going to choose to beat you. So what are you going to do now? Are you going to keep crying like a little girl, or are you going to stand up and be a woman?
Yeah, this chapter is always such an emotional catharsis to me. I don't know how he does it, but it feels like such a relief when they welcome her back in here. And they say, you have no toward. This woman has no toe towards me. And you realize that she hasn't lost. Like, it's been this fear throughout this entire book, and really the last one, that she's going to lose the society and these women that she respects so much, that when she leaves them, she's going to lose them as allies. And you realize in that moment that she's not going to lose these women as allies. And it's a very emotional, very cathartic moment.
I mean, Sora Lee is even like, hopefully the Aes Sedai kick you out so we can take you back.
Right.
Yeah. She says, "Get up before we think you are boasting."
She's like, I want you back. I want you to be an Aiel. Hopefully you can never be an Aes Sedai. Which is, yeah, the opposite of... I mean, she loses the one teacher, but she doesn't lose the respect of the people that teacher came from.
No, and she's part of a society. Like, how many people want desperately to be part of something and accepted? And, like, I mean, how many people go down dark pathways trying to find a group that will accept them? Like, that, you know, it is one of the more base emotions, is to be one of us, you know, of the in-group, one of the in crowd, and she gets to be part of that. This very elite group of very badass women that she respects a lot.
And not just channelers, but warriors and negotiators. This is an entire culture, not some narrow little special interest group. This is all the Aiel.
I think of it as an entire group of Amerlin seats.
Seriously.
Yeah, most of them could do it way better than most Aes Sedai could. Yeah, after they all welcome her back, then there's hugging and people start to leave.
Yeah, Bear says, "I'll teach you." Ami says, "I will not. I told you if you broke your word, I wouldn't." Even though, you know, that's just the consequence. That's the payment. That's the toe that you have to make up.
Yeah. No, that's the toe you can never make up.
Make up, yeah.
Because Ami, you've paid your toe, but Ami has set herself to a course of action, and nothing you can do will change how she feels about that.
And that's not for the lying about being Amerlin seat. That's for going into Telerun Riyadh. That
was, you crossed the line in the sand, and I'm going to hold you to it.
And they say that they're going to tell her of the events there with Rand, but eventually, don't they? They kind of stop relaying all of the information, because I feel like later on, when she starts, once she's Amerlin and she starts becoming more deeply seated in the tower, they end up not sharing quite as much about Rand.
Yeah, as she becomes more Aes Sedai.
in the meeting in the fields of Marilor, she assumes that they're going to be on her side in the discussion of the seals, and they are not.
Mm-hmm.
There's basically nobody on her side at that point. I don't know. That part really annoyed me. I really liked it, but that was when Egwene was peak annoying for me.
For a lot of people.
Yeah, that part she started to feel like too on to me, just so set. And it's like, come on, be flexible.
That's why Egwene in the Sanderson books is like my least favorite Egwene. Even though I don't think he took her progression in a wrong way. It's just I think her progression got to a point where I stopped liking her.
She becomes who the tower needs her to be, not who she should be, you know? And I think that's also part of why at this point, the wise ones are like, oh yeah, we're going to totally exchange information. We're going to stay in the loop because they're seeing her as an Aes Sedai. Later, she is the leader of the Aes Sedai. She represents that organization in a way that is more than just her.
Yeah.
And she is kind of right. Like, breaking the seals before the last battle is a fucking terrible idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, she's right. That's the thing. Like, everyone's like, I'm so annoyed with Egwene in the scene. I'm like, but she's right. But I'm right. You know, like...
I was never annoyed with what she was trying to say. I was annoyed with how she said it. And the fact that she never bothered to try and listen to Rand, like, once.
But he didn't try and listen to her either. He was manipulating her the whole time.
He was actually insane for a while.
Yeah.
I find Egwene very intractable because she's afraid of the impacts of compromise. And I see, you know, it takes Moiraine coming back from the dead and quoting prophecy to like break through the formality and be like, no, there is a way. You're watching the seals because they have to be broken at a very specific time. And like, come on, Egwene.
And this is where I think the Sanderson writing is a little off. I think he had to make her stubborn to give Moraine's return meaning. And she was stubborn because plot, not because that's true to her character.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Which is part of why she's so frustrating, because I know her character, right?
Oh, okay, completely somewhat random. You guys mentioned Moiraine, but in the last book, like, Moiraine comes back, and then Lan and her only spend like one scene together, and they're kind of like upset with each other or something.
It has a bad breakup kind of vibe, yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, I don't know, if that felt weird to me, and I was really disappointed they never got to be together again. Not like together, just like in a scene together.
Yeah, I wanted them to reunite.
I did too. It would have been nice to see them. It
was just kind of an awkward, like, offhand, like, you got one glimpse that they were angry or uncomfortable with each other, and I was like, oh, okay.
Because I would have liked to see him thank her for saving his life for Nynaeve.
Yeah, and I know he was mad that like
Nynaeve...
he got pawned off, but it ended up working out.
And have her be like, apologize and be like, thank you for, serving me for all this time. And like, but they really did. They made their cut clean.
Yeah.
She knew she was going away and didn't leave him a note. He turned and left. Like, they both believe in clean cuts. And it was pretty final.
Yeah. It was still unsatisfying.
Yeah, but I thought it was final because he thought she was dead. I figured he would have a bigger reaction to knowing that he was alive. This person that he cared deeply about, he barely reacts to her coming back. That's one of my only criticisms of the last book.
Yeah, the part where he literally has, like, the death curse of the decaying bond, like, eating his soul up, and then doesn't even get, like, a box of apology chocolates when she comes back from the dead. Like, come on.
The last three books are going to have an additional segment, which is criticizing Sanderson's writing of the characters. It's just going to have to be, like, a separate segment.
Yeah,
like,
we do it from love.
We do it from love. We love everything that happened, but there are flaws, and I think in order to not get caught up in them, I'm going to have to sequester them.
That's a really good idea, given how often it derails the podcast already. That's a really good idea.
No, because I think mostly he just did a fantastic job. So, I mean...
Exactly, yeah. And we can nitpick the details, because we're nerds, and we like to nitpick the details. And there are some things he definitely got wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, corralling it into a specific section will help.
But yes, and I do want to talk about that stuff, but yeah, sort of keeping it from derailing the rest of the conversation.
Well, in this chapter we had not too much left.
No, we're almost there.
Getting there.
Yeah, talking about Rand, and then they kind of leave.
And Sorelia shoos the younger women out, even though they're old enough to be grandmothers, which is just delightful, because Sorelia is delightful.
Then they talk about the Ruark.
Maybe they meant to stay and tried talking her out of it, but Cerelia began muttering only half under her breath about fools who tried to stop a woman from doing what she thought she had to do. The younger pair straightened their shawls. They had to be 70 or 80.
Definitely younger.
The younger pair, like they're little girls or something, but they're like, we are the oldest people in this society.
And she's like, shoo, stop bothering her. She's made her decision. Like,
right, this young woman knows what she needs to do better than you two old biddies do. Now get.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Great. I love the way you said that.
I love Cerelia so much.
She is a phenomenal character.
And then, like, one parting shot. Think on Tarek. That was that very handsome dude that she wanted.
Oh, yeah, her great-great-great-grandson or something.
Everybody collectively said, please go to Tarek instead of Gawain.
Yes. This is why we really love Cerelia. She knew who Egwene needed.
Exactly. Listen to your grandmother.
Some random dude nobody's ever heard of.
My great-daughter Amaran's youngest great-son. So that's a great-great-great-grandson? That's a lot of greats.
Yeah, he's like 12.
Yeah, and she's like, oh, and you're going to need a sister wife, for sure. So, like, let's start working on that.
Mm-hmm.
And
who would be Egwene's sister wife?
Oh, somebody we've never met, I think. Because Avienda's sister's already married. So, it can't be Avienda's sister.
She doesn't have a ton of close.
Yeah, just some other. No.
But Suan married somebody else, so then Egwene would have to marry Bren.
Leanne?
No, it's gotta be an Aiel. It's gotta be an Aiel who, like, never even crossed the spine of the world. But moving on to probably what you guys are both going to point out, this amazing line from her. We are always more afraid than we wish to be, but we can always be braver than we expect. Oh, Cerelia. Love that. That's the Gandalf line about courage and living in dangerous times and whatever, right there.
Oh, that whole paragraph. Hold on to your heart, and the Aes Sedai cannot harm what is really you, your heart, your Aiel heart. You are not always nearly so far above us as we believed. May you always find water and shade, Egwene, and always remember your heart.
Yeah. Very, very good rousing speech from her. Good parting farewell.
That's what pulls her through. That's what powers her through the White Tower. That's what powers her through the last battle, through everything. Through Gawain. I mean, yeah.
Rude. She's happily married to Gawain for a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
They actually do get married, right? Yeah, they do.
Yes, they do.
It's just like very brief.
And then they die. I think I want to end on Cerelia.
Pretty much everything she says, though, is perfection, so.
She's just Aiel Linny.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Yeah. The two of those in a room together.
Oof. Yeah, sparks would fly.
I think just, like, can you imagine being caught between them?
Running away.
If they, like, got together. It's, okay. And
that's
throw Codswain into the mix.
Ooh.
Codswain, Linny, and Cerelia walk into a bar.
That'd be amazing.
I'm taking my chances with Linny, though, because she can't kill me as easily.
That's what you think.
Oof.
How you been doing? It's been about 2 months since we talked last, so what have you been up to?
Yikes, I have done some stuff between. I've done a lot of mandated volunteer hours for our school, and been every Saturday going out and cleaning up a forest. Done some interesting things like carrying tree trunks, and last Saturday we went and kayaked along the river and picked up trash. It's been pretty interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been a fun way to meet some new people from the school and just like people from the Dallas area.
Right, because I think last time we talked, you were pretty much holed up.
Yeah, yeah, I was, and I still kind of am. I'm going back home to my hometown area tomorrow, actually, so I'll be done with my apartment here for the rest of the semester. Back with my parents and my brother, and that's always interesting.
I was gonna say, how's living with your parents? That's better than for some people than others.
Yeah, it's mostly good. I mean, they watch pretty much all the same stuff I do, and I have fun there. And it's nice not having to pay for my own food.
Always. Oh man, free food tastes so good.
Yeah. Other than that, though, I mean, I've been working on some personal projects, some with people on here, and then I'd kind of stalled out on my main writing book, but I'm sure it'll pick back up soon.
Oh yeah, especially with winter coming around, it'll be once you're home, settle back in, things will, I'm sure.
Now that I'm done with
again.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I can focus on other things.
I've been doing a Breaking Bad rewatch actually.
Ooh.
Because it's just depressing enough. It's like, yeah, everything's gonna go to shit. Like it's actually the exact correct mood for how I'm feeling right now.
That's the one I watched last semester that I binge watched in like 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
I know I watched the entire first season in a day. I just sat down and watched all of it, but it's shorter, so it's not quite as long.
Yeah, I think I did the same thing where it's like, I just because once you get started, it's so hard to stop Breaking Bad. It just really sucks you in. You're like, it can't get any worse, and then it just does.
Yeah.
Over and over again.
I assume you saw the El Camino movie. Have you seen the...
No.
No? It's on Netflix. It's the sequel movie to the end of the series.
No.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
Oh, is that with just Logan? Not whatever his name is.
Aaron Paul, yeah.
Aaron Paul. Not Logan Paul. God. Different person. Aaron Paul, yeah. I saw previews for it, but I actually haven't seen Better Call Saul either.
I haven't seen that one yet. I'm kind of waiting for it to end, then I'll pick it up, because it only has one more season now, so gotcha. I think I'm just going to wait until it's over. But I thought El Camino was really good.
Okay, yeah, I'll watch that then. Well, what I'll do is I'll finish the series and add El Camino onto the end of it.
Yeah. Definitely makes sense as a epilogue to the actual show.
Aradia, any change at the house over the last couple of days?
Well, the horses are now working on mowing the back for the main field. They were sort of corralled off in a corner, and the main field was getting really shaggy, so the horses got brought over to work on that. But it's been raining here so insanely hard that they haven't been out much. They've mostly been kept in their barn, because it has been dumping here, which has been awesome. We've had power outages almost every night, and I'm so happy to be back in this part of the Coast Range. It's just, I missed this. It's silly, I know, but... So I've been doing a lot of natural science, getting my rain gauges set up, and just kind of settling into, I'm going to observe this spot for a long time.
Do you have a decent telescope?
I have 2. I think we're missing a few pieces for both of them, so we have to get them out and actually figure out what exactly is missing. But Brandon and I both have almost the same telescope from when we were kids.
Nice.
Yeah. It's good enough to, see good features of all the major planets and double as a bird spotting scope if you really need, kind of.
Yeah, I'm actually, with that new camera, I'm kind of curious to see if I can get decent sort of time-lapse sky photos, because I've got a good low-light lens on it. And I'm thinking, I was looking at stacking photos as a method of you just do 50 to 100 exposures, which you can do pretty quick with a camera like that on a tripod, and then you just layer them together and take the average, and it filters out a bunch of the noise, and you get a much clearer photo.
Ooh, neat.
I've seen some pretty impressive photos taken with just base consumer products, but doing it in the city is not even feasible. Right. There's no light. There's no light to absorb. It's all blocked. So. Yeah.
Well, in the summer, when the clouds have gone away, you should definitely come down here and check out the awesome dark skies I've got to work with.
Yeah, I want to come down there and hang out and check it out. Yeah.
It's so nice.
Yeah, you said you have a river running partly through your... Yeah. Or a stream or something?
400 feet of creek that is extremely flashy, which means that it goes from a very small creek to a sizably small river in the winter when the rain falls at a rate of 1+ inches a day.
So I'd assume it's flashing pretty good right about now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to get a meter stick or something to stick in the bank somewhere so I can actually qualitatively measure how much it's going up and down. But yeah, when we first got here, it's oh yeah, you can walk down the bank and stand on a rock, in the riverbed and look at the bedrock. And now it's you go down to that edge and just a few inches below your feet where that inflection point is, that's where the water starts. Mm-hmm. So it's come up by, 3 or 4 feet. Oh, I'm really bad at using myself as a yardstick. Somewhere between 3 and 5 feet. is how much it's come up. And it clearly hasn't reached even mild flood stage yet. So that's exciting.
Do you get fish?
Oh, yeah. It's a big salmon stream. Before the rains came back, we'd go down there at twilight, and it was just every few seconds there'd be this giant salmon splashing through the water or jumping. We saw one skip itself like 4 times along the water. Like, what are you doing? Like a dolphin or something. Just like, okay. But yeah, giant salmon. Super, super important salmon stream.
I mean, it's the last thing they're going to do before they die, so quite literally putting their dying effort into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely
Like,
the taking care of the stream for the salmon is like a big part of how I feel responsible to like steward the land.
it's kind of like doing a cannonball when you jump off a building or a flip.
Yikes.
Yeah, why not do it with style?
Yeah,
while
it's
you're
like
going to your death.
right.
For sure.
Except if jumping off a building was spawning and ensuring the continuation of your race and civilization. So
Right, yeah, there is the part where it's the only way to reproduce.
Right, yeah. It's sort of an odd. Also feeding all the hungry bears.
Yeah, the salmon are the basis for how all of the nutrients that are getting washed out by the rain can get back upstream. It's through the effort of spawning salmon, and then they fuel the bears and the trees, and then the nutrients can come trickling back to the ocean over time.
I thought that was Krem falling out of the Stormfather. I made a huge mistake by scheduling a recording today. I should have definitely put a big X on the calendar and been like, no, there's a big book coming out today. You're going to want to read. And instead, I have a really exciting chapter to talk about.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?